Hello and welcome into episode 248 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Bridget Prue alongside Scott McLaughlin. Brian DeFelice, honestly, I don't think we ever asked what he was doing tonight, but he couldn't join us.
We did ask him to be on the podcast, but
he was welcome.
he
was invited back, but he said no. He's busy. So that's what we're going with. The Bruins had a bounce back win against the Sharks, 3-0, a shutout for Jeremy Swayman, a few fights. We'll get right to our opening shift. Scott, let's go to you.
Yeah, I think Danton Heinen had another really strong game and has been playing well since, obviously wasn't playing games right away because he technically wasn't under contract and, had that whole weird PTO situation. But since signing, he's up to 7 points in 14 games now, which doesn't, jump off the page, but half a point per game from Heinen, I think is probably more than you anticipated. Like, that's really solid. Third line, middle six type production. And he's just, the goal he scores Thursday night, just a good shot. I thought he played a really good all-around game, forced some turnovers, set up a couple other chances. After the game, asked Jim Montgomery about him, and he said, he's a really good player who's playing really good hockey right now, helping the team. He's helping his line mates. He's making guys that he's playing with better. And I think you're just seeing, you can see him growing and see his confidence growing the more he plays for this team. He's been all over the lineup. And now we're going to get into, some of the new line combinations that they tried out Thursday night, but his line with Poitras and Brad Marchand was, probably the Bruins' best line in this game. So, I think Danton Heinen deserves quite a bit of credit for stepping into this team and, playing a pretty important role in producing and, filling a need. I mean, this team needed some help on the wings and needed guys to step up, and he has so far.
Yeah, and I definitely have a lot of things to say about that as well. But to get to my opening shift first, huge difference between the physicality and the response to dirty plays from the Columbus game to the Sharks game. It was clearly a point of emphasis that you need to spark energy and stick up for your teammates, and that is something that the Bruins have done. Usually that's kind of a staple of the Bruins team, but in that stretch of losses, it just didn't look like that was who they were. And you see Trent Frederick get into a fight with Giovanni Smith, who had 12 pounds on him. I wouldn't want to go anywhere near him, but that's the kind of guy that Frederick was willing to drop the gloves against. And when we saw him after the game, he had some bloody knuckles and some cuts on his face, but he actually did a decent job. I thought he got himself back up, and I think he has a certain level of crazy in him that allows him to take a bunch of punches to the face and then just pop up and and I say that in a positive way. I don't mean that as an insult at all. In a fight, you have to have a little bit of an edge, and I say crazy usually helps you win a fight. That's why I think I'd be good in a fight if I ever got in one. But if I ever decide to fight Scott one of these days, I think I have the bonus crazy that he couldn't handle. But
I'm not putting that to the test. So
yeah, well, no, we always threaten to fight each other pretty much every day. Like, you said you were going to throw me in front of that rolling cart, with all the Bruins equipment today.
Well, that only happens when you either mess with my popcorn or try to take a photo of me taking a photo of my popcorn
or eating
or when you sing One Direction to me. So
yeah, but that's what makes you beautiful, Scott. And by the way, that's every day. Like I said, I do one of those things or both of those things every game. So anyway, I would win. And that wasn't the only fight. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just me and Scott. It wasn't just Frederick and Smith. Brad Marchand got into a fight 28 seconds after the Frederick fight. Wasn't as much of a fight, but you see the physical response. And Marchand was someone that we talked about last I called it a broadcast. It's because I'm usually on a broadcast. Last podcast, that we thought Marchand could be someone that could drag people into the fight, and he stepped up in that way. So physicality was much better than it was against Columbus.
Yeah, and it needed to be like we've seen that in spurts from this team this year, where they've stepped up and kind of met, another team's physicality, or another team taking runs at them, or whatever it might be. Thinking back to like the second Montreal game, the first one they kind of got pushed around a little bit. The second one they responded. The Florida game, where the Panthers come out and they take runs at McAvoy, and Bruins are maybe a little slow to respond, but eventually did. And Derek Forbort was the one who dropped the gloves in that game. But then, yeah, certainly in this most recent stretch, they have not been very physical. Just haven't been good checking team overall. And, Jim Montgomery when he was talking about this on Wednesday, made sure to make the distinction between, like, yes, we want more physicality, but we also just want to take away time and space, like just the actual literal hockey definition of checking, of like slowing down an opponent. So I thought they did a better job on both of those things. They were more physical. Now they're playing the San Jose Sharks, who have the worst record in the NHL. Like, you should be able to check pretty well against that team and play pretty good defense. And for the most part, I think they did. A little bit of a slower start, but really dominated the second period and pretty much put the game away from there. Like 2-0 going to the third is, pretty much lights out against a team like San Jose. But yeah, Giovanni Smith takes that run at Marchand, hits him from behind, and not long after, Frederic kind of gets retribution. So you like to see that, and you like to see the Bruins just playing better hockey in general. Like, was it perfect? Was it totally dominant for 60 minutes? No, but it's a clear step in the right direction, even against a weaker opponent. Like, this was much more the Bruins just playing the way that they have to play.
Yeah. And so let's go back to yours, because I have a lot of thoughts. Like, I think we covered the physicality just because it was kind of like, it's there, it's not, and it was there. And it was from people that, like, Frederic, that's his role. Like, he's kind of, that's been his defined role, and he's comfortable in it. Marchand, his role as a leader, it kind of falls on him to step up and stand up for his team as well. So to go back to yours, to look, and by the way, that Marchand, Patra, Heinen line, and you can argue like which one's really the first line. That was what was listed as the first line today. So it was Marchand, Patra, Heinen, DeBrusk, Zacha, Pasta, the normal third line of JVR, Coyle, and Freddie, and then a fourth line of Lauko, Beecher, Geeky. To stick to what the top six looked like, Coach said that the Patra line with Marchand and Heinen looked the best of anyone, which, our own eyes said that as well. But he was impressed with the looks that they got. I thought that the chemistry looked like it was there. And it hasn't at other times in the past with Patra and Marchand. But him and Heinen have been working on the chemistry for a while, because they've been on the same line. They had DeBrusk instead of Marchand for a stretch. I like the look of it tonight. I'm not 100% sure it's a line that's going to produce long term. Like, I'm not sure it's your option that you keep, but it looked good against San Jose.
Yeah, what I really liked about that line was the puck possession and just hanging onto the puck. Like, Patra and Marchand especially both had multiple times carrying the puck from like their own end into the offensive zone, and taking the space that was there, and not just looking to like get the puck off their stick and make a pass as quickly as possible, but realizing there was ice there. There was plays to be made. There was a zone entry to be had, and holding on to it until something developed. So that was encouraging to see. And again, Heinen's role in that line, like, he helped win quite a few pucks back, and that was something that Montgomery highlighted after morning skate on Thursday. He mentioned that they track 50-50 battles internally, like as a stat. And Heinen at that point had won 64% of his battles this season, which is obviously very good. Like, we don't know the numbers on everyone else on the team, but if you're defining a 50-50 battle correctly, then the average should be around 50%. So,
wow, Scott, really? You got the math on that?
There's your trip to advanced stats corner.
50-50 equals 50-50, 50%.
But yeah, like we've seen this from Heinen though. He's been doing a good job winning battles along the boards, winning pucks back, and just making things happen. So yeah, I know I thought so. Montgomery was a little bit down, I guess, on the DeBrusk, Zacha, Pasternak line, or at least said like they were good in spurts, but he seemed like he wanted more. I actually thought that line was really strong. Like I thought they had a really good game too. And I do think the advanced stats like back that one up as well, because when they were on the ice, the Bruins outshot the Sharks 8-2, and that line also scored a goal with all three guys involved. Pasternak to Zacha to DeBrusk with a nice finish, backhand 5-hole. Pasternak and Zacha also combined for a power play goal. So yeah, I thought both of those lines looked good, and maybe the line that had a quieter game a little bit was the Van Riemsdyk, Coyle, Frederick line. Obviously, we've already touched on Frederick's physicality, but we know that line's been strong. That's kind of the one you were least worried about. There's a reason Jim Montgomery kept that one together, so not really worried about them. And yeah, as far as how the lines get listed, I honestly just don't care. I mean, to me,
and I just say I only said it because that's if I'm referring this episode to the first line, that's what I'm just for this episode. That's what that was what it was listed as in San Jose.
I mean, I would say I think they do that because Martian's the captain. I mean, realistically, I think whatever line Pasternak is on is the first line.
Yeah, but guess what? It was the best line today. So it's a toss up. I think we've gotten to this discussion / argument / whatever, every episode this season, because there's not a defined clear line, especially when you break up Pasternak from Marchand. So
right, which is that it's a nice thing when they're playing well, and and you have some balance. I do still wonder if at some point do you kind of need more defined lines and a clear top line that's kind of capable of stepping up and taking over a game on any given night. Do you need a clear second line that can score and handle tough matchups? I guess that's all, those are all questions to be answered down the line, but really what's most important is just finding combinations that work well. And then I think you can kind of figure out roles from there and figure out who gets what minutes and what matchups and all that from there.
Yeah. And even in today's game, you still saw third line, playing its role. There were a few chances for Coyle, getting in front of the net. And there was the fight from Frederick, which is part of the identity of that line. And, Van Riemsdyk also plays a role on the power play away from those guys. So they're still playing those roles, but not to get too far in the weeds with that. I did see this the other day. So we've had quite a few comments on our last podcast, and one of them was about potential lines that I just want to open up real quick. So this is from George, and we appreciate George commenting on, I think, every podcast we've ever done. We see you. His idea, which is completely different than what Jim Montgomery went with today, was first line Pasta Patra JVR, which is kind of an interesting one that I don't think we've really talked about too much. Second line of Coyle Frederick Marchand. And then DeBrusque, Zaka, Geeky as a third line, and Heinen, Bicha, Lauko as a fourth line. That one I just feel like it's outside the box, but I figured is not a mailbag episode, but we do like to respond to some of the comments we get.
Yeah, that's not too different than I think what I pitched last podcast, which I think I probably had DeBrusque and JVR flipped. I think I said DeBrusque with Patra and Pasternak, but I did think it was interesting that Montgomery went back to Zach and Pasternak being together because, as we had talked about in Monday's game, Marchand, Zach, and Pasternak all ended up on different lines, and I thought he might keep it that way since those three together had struggled so much, but it certainly says something about what he thinks of Zaka and Pasternak together that he went back even after Zaka had probably one of his worst games of the season, maybe the worst game he's had this year. And I thought he was better. That line was better, as we've talked about. So, you can see like where he's trying to find at least kind of like those duos that can stick together, and then maybe you can move around the third piece sometimes. And obviously he liked Zaka and Pasternak, so not too surprising that he went back to that. And obviously they rewarded him. They had a strong game.
Yeah, I think that the idea too that George had was to put a strong net front guy on the same line as Pasta and Patra. Maybe like that gives, because we know how heavily Pasta is guarded every game. But maybe taking away the eyes of the goalie the way that Van Riemsdyk can, maybe that changes the dynamic. So I see the point there. And maybe we'll see it at some point because Montgomery just rotates through. So maybe we will see it, but that we haven't seen it yet. So yeah, and someone asked Montgomery after the game, like, "Are you going to stay with this for a while, or are you going to?" And I'm just laughing in my head, like, he's going to switch it tomorrow. Like, it's going to be different. And it's just what happens at this point. Like, it's just like my brain is just keeping track of all the changes in game and like trying to take stock of, oh, I liked this from this line and this from that. It's very confusing sometimes. It's like trying to keep track of so many moving pieces.
Yeah, I mean, he had stuck with the previous combinations for really almost like a couple weeks, at least as far as the top three lines. I think there was a little rotation on the fourth line, like with Geeky coming back into the lineup and whatever. But yeah, I would say certainly after Thursday night, like you at least give these combinations another game and give them a chance to grow. And just to swing it back maybe one more time to Heinen, like I remember when I tweeted out the lines from practice on Wednesday, the most common response was like, oh, they clearly need another top six win. Because I think the way I listed them was, like I said, like Pasternak's line is the top one, and then I put Marchand, Patra, Heinen second. But it's like, again, like don't get caught up on like who's listed where. They're just looking for combinations that work. And people were like Heinen's played well, but he can't be a top six winger. And it's like, yeah, maybe not in the classic sense, but if you're, again, like if he's playing as well as he has, and by the way, he's kind of producing like one of their top six forwards right now. He is currently he's currently fifth in 5-on-5 goals per 60 minutes on the team. And he is fifth in points per 60 minutes at 5-on-5.
Which, by the way, Scott has to qualify it with the points per 60 minutes because he missed so many games earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean that, and it's also, I think it's just the best way to get everyone on even playing field anyways, because obviously some guys play more minutes per game. So
yeah, and some
that helps
guys,
even out. By the way, here's a fun little trivia question for you. Who leads the Bruins in 5-on-5 goals per 60 minutes?
Charlie Coyle. No,
Charlie Coyle is second. He's actually tied. There's a three-way tie for second, and Coyle's part of it.
Is this an obvious answer? Like, are we looking at?
No, it's not. No, I don't think anyone would get it. It is Johnny Beecher.
Yeah, because he's not out there for power play penalty kill. He's like, that's what he's out there for. 5-on-5 mostly.
Yeah, he's got. I think it's what 3 5-on-5 goals in a little over 180 minutes. So that or 4 actually. Yeah, all 4 of his have come on 5-on-5.
That's like, so. Is that like when you have like great face-off stats because you only took 8 face-offs and like you won 7 of them and everybody else is taking 100?
I mean, it's still a credit to him though. Like it's still almost 190 minutes. So like, yeah, that's well behind like 260 from Coyle and Zacco, but I just found it interesting, and is a little bit of a credit to him. Like obviously, if you're gonna get a fourth line center who has 4 5-on-5 goals already, that's pretty solid.
And I would say, you said the internal stat that they track, which I would be very interested to see the numbers that the Bruins have for the 50-50 battles won stat that you mentioned earlier. I'm willing to bet that Charlie Coyle's is pretty high in terms of like his control, the way that he always wins puck battles. And I'm willing to guess that his is probably highest or close to it. He's got to be top 5.
Yeah, I would assume so as well. Think I should ask Montgomery who's last on the team. Think he'll give me that?
I just want him to show us the notebook, or the spreadsheet or whatever it is. Just forward that to us.
I would love like to just get like a couple hours like looking at their internal metrics, because they use a lot of stuff that like is available to the public, but they also have so much else, and it's I mean they have a whole analytics team, and it's fascinating because it's like first Montgomery has to decide, okay, what do I value, like what does he want to look at, want to use, want to know, and then how do you like translate that to the players, because you can't just throw a bunch of numbers at players. So like then it's up to him to kind of distill it into actual hockey terms, and in terms of like what that stuff looks like on the ice. But yeah, I'm a little surprised that like there's not a more public effort somewhere to track like 5-on-5 battles. I know it'd be tough because it's like very subjective.
50-50 battles.
Yeah, whatever.
50-50 battles.
50% battles.
I thought I was the one with only one brain cell working, but you know what? I'm doing okay. I was doing this before. I was doing that before when Scott was trying to look up some stats. But anyhow, it's very late, by the way, when we're recording this. It's midnight right now. So that's why we're acting like this. And we both just came back from the Garden, and I got stuck in traffic at 11 o'clock. Good job, Massachusetts. What was I saying? Oh, so I was going to say, Scott, if this whole writing thing doesn't work out for you, or this whole podcast thing doesn't work out for you, maybe that you could go into Bruins analytics department. I think that might be a good fit. And then you could share me the spreadsheets.
No, then I'd have to keep state secrets. Can't leak anything.
But like, I won't tell them it was you. All right. So we have one last segment before we both lose our mind. We're gonna get to it. So because this is normally the time of week that we do who's up, who's down, because there's such a huge difference between the two games this week, the Columbus game and the San Jose game, we're kind of more doing like a recency bias towards the comeback in the San Jose game. So who looked like they bounced back? Scotty, who's up?
Well, one we haven't mentioned yet, but Jeremy Swayman responded really well after getting pulled Monday, which, wasn't entirely because of his play. Obviously, it was mostly to spark the team, but he had also looked shaky on at least one of the goals, and maybe another shot in there. But Montgomery goes right back to him, and he gets a shutout. Stops 26 shots. I don't think he was super heavily tested, but there were some tough chances in there. And
you know what? It could have gotten a lot more difficult, but the 5-on, like when you're trying to kill off a 5-on-3, you're gonna face some decent shots, but for whatever reason, San Jose just really wasn't moving the puck very well in their 5-on-3 power play, and there was a few block shots, and it was a good. I mean, it was a great spot.
That the reason for that is they suck. They're just not a good hockey team.
That's just,
I mean, credit to the Bruins penalty kill. Obviously, like that, it was a really good 5-on-3 kill. But the Sharks, they're not very talented. They do not have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, and that's
poor David Quinn and Mike Greer, my BU brothers.
Oh man, yeah, no. There was a billion BU people in the press box today, by the way. You guys looked way too happy up there.
Well, that's because San Jose's BU West, so everyone's going to come out.
Yeah, well, they did. And so we have a few ups. So you say Swayman is one. I say I'll start with Patra. I think Patra had a really good setup on the Heinen goal. He had just throughout the game a few good setups. He took the shots he needed to take. He didn't score, but when he had an open lane to shoot, he did what you wanted him to do. He puts the puck on net, and he even at the very end of the game when it was already like over, there was only like 10 seconds left. He snuck another one in that almost looked like it could have been a pretty decent scoring chance. I thought that line we mentioned as a whole was very good, but Patra is part of that. Patra is a good playmaker. He facilitates, and we saw him be able to set up Heinen, and that led to that goal. So,
yeah, and points in back-to-back games, and that's the kind of thing. Like his goal in that Columbus game doesn't matter in the game. Like the Bruins were down by so much, but for him, like to get his first goal in 10 games, it's good to see that go in and just to feel like you're starting to get something going, and then you add in the assist tonight. So yeah, that and I think what's always impressive about him is like no matter, even when he makes a mistake, like he had one in the Rangers game that leads to a goal, he just always looks confident when he comes back, and is willing to hold on to pucks. You saw him take a couple hits to make plays on Thursday. So
yeah, one of them he drew a penalty, and guess what? He stuck up for himself. He stuck up for himself after that. He grabbed Burrows by the head. Like he tried. All right, he tried. It was part of a larger scrum that was happening in the corner, but he wasn't, trying to shy away from it because he was sticking up for himself. And some of the other guys, that was the same scrum that really sparked. And it was a few minutes later, but the Frederick Smith fight, like there were some liberties taken in that scrum. So yeah, Patra overall did the best he could with the minutes he had and the situations that he had. So I know who your other up is because you're writing about him. You're writing an article about him tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we already covered Heinen quite a bit, but he would obviously be an up. I would also, I guess, just to round out that line, Marchand was certainly down for several games. And if you just look at the box score, this makes it 5 straight games without a point for him. Now 8 games without a goal for Marchand. So in that sense, I think, he's still down until he gets on the score sheet. But I think you saw him play a much better game on Thursday. We talked about being involved physically, helping to drag the team into the fight, bringing that energy that, we had talked about in the last podcast. He didn't really seem to be bringing, wasn't really doing much to spark the team. Well, he did. He had 4 shots on goal too. So, and obviously he's the clear leader on that line. Whether he's driving play or someone else is, he's the captain, he's the veteran, and he's kind of bringing Patra and Heinen along with them. So certainly a step towards being up for Marchand. even if on the whole he might still be down right now.
Yeah, and you want to know what I noticed today, and we mentioned that he hasn't been crisp on the passes. Trying to take stock of the passes that he makes that get picked off. He's trying to force stuff that's not there. The turnovers will go way down for him if he just picks the right pass. Like he's trying to do a little bit too much. He's trying to go from the corner to the opposite point with passes. He's trying to force things that the passing lane is just not there. And even on the power play. So I just feel like there's an easy way for him to cut down on those turnovers, because if you just look back at the tape, the ones he is turning the puck over on are passes that are something it's just not the easiest option, and not necessarily, it's just kind of forcing it. I will go to my down, somewhat related. This is not a person. In general, special teams have not been as good for the Bruins recently. In their losing streak, the penalty kill didn't look great. And the power play hasn't either. And there is a power play goal by Zacha in today's game against San Jose, but that was kind of on the rush. It wasn't because there was set up zone time, and it came as Zacha just had speed towards the net and did a great forehand, backhand move, scored. But in general, that top power play unit against San Jose was having trouble getting into the zone. They were turning pucks over. During one of the power plays, Montgomery put the second unit on only at 30 seconds in, because they weren't getting a lot done on the power play.
Yeah, I was gonna say that goal. Yeah, it's more on the rush than an end zone setup, but it came on a clean entry. There just weren't enough of those. Too many of even before that ends up in the net, that stood out because it was hey, Pastrnak just got a completely clean entry, made a nice move, went wide, got himself space. And too many of their other entries, it was guys trying to skate through defenders, make dekes at the blue line. It's it shouldn't be that hard, especially against San Jose. You shouldn't have to be, it shouldn't have to be Pastrnak or Marchand dangling around a defenseman in order to get a clean entry. That means you ran into trouble. Something went wrong if that's what you're going to. So, yeah, definitely work to do there. My down would be Matt Grzelcyk, who I don't think has been great since coming back. Now, some of that might be that he's still, getting up to speed, working his way in, or whatever. It's only been 3 games. But we saw him, pulled off the pairing with McAvoy because those two did not really get their usual chemistry back right away. They'd been on the ice for a couple goals against and were struggling overall. So he starts Thursday's game with Brandon Carlo, and I think they eventually started playing pretty well. But early on, the Bruins were actually getting kind of caved in when they were on the ice. I think shots on goal when that pairing was on the ice was 8-1 San Jose at one point. And Grzelcyk just looked, I just think he's looked a little slower moving the puck than what we're used to. His timing's just not quite back yet. He's kind of held on a little too long and ended up in traffic or under pressure. I don't think we've seen him all that involved offensively yet since returning. So, it's again, there's time for him to work back. There's time for him to get going, but so far he hasn't really hit the ground running since returning.
And I just want to bring this point up because I think it's relevant. Grzelcyk is coming back in a time where the Bruins really didn't have any practices. And, so he hasn't had time to get up to speed necessarily the same way you normally would, because where their schedule wasn't allowing for practices because of travel, they hadn't had really time for him to work into practices. And I know that when you're coming back from injury, as much reps as you can get, whether it be in game or practice, really helps a lot to get back up to speed. So just putting that out there. So that's our ups and downs. I'm going to throw a quick up in here, DeBrusque. And I don't even feel like I need to explain that, you know, he scored. He made a great pass to Pasternak right before he scored. It was like some sort of like, it was almost like a Hail Mary that he threw into space and knew Pasternak was going to be there. And I was like, oh, wow. So they definitely have done this before. Like they look like they were completely on the same page for a pass that it could have gone wrong, but it didn't. And it ended up in the goal. Because then it goes Pasta to Zacha back to DeBrusque. And so they looked good on the rush. So that's an up. But we don't really have time for much more. The only thing I have left to ask you, Scott, is wait, I'm taking that one. What is your Spotify Wrapped? What is your Spotify Wrapped?
So here's a little fun fact about me. I am an Apple Music person. I barely use Spotify.
Then you're missing out.
I don't really think I am.
You're missing out on the Wrapped, and you love advanced analytics, man. Like, do they do that on Apple Music?
They do some, so I don't think it's available yet. Last year they did something somewhat similar. But yeah, Apple Music, like I'll ride with that. I don't like supporting Apple, but you know, I mean, Spotify's not a whole lot better.
I told Ange, another one of the Bruins writers, I told her what mine was, and she's like, I listen to CDs, and I'm like, okay. Like, all right, so you probably don't know what the stats are, but it's definitely Hanson for her. Which I can't say anything because my three of my top 5 are Harry Styles, One Direction, and Niall Horan. So I cannot say anything at all.
I mean, honestly, like mine would probably just be Bruce Springsteen. So I'm going even older and less current. I would say for newer stuff though, like you get Boy Genius in there. Really like the album they put out this year. So I don't know.
And number one song for Scott was "That's What Makes You Beautiful" by One Direction.
I don't think that's accurate, but
well,
I did like that song before you started singing all the time.
You can't prove that it's not. You can't prove that it's not. So just saying. All right, are we good? I am.
My very last thing, the quickest fashion segment ever, but I love those Sharks uniforms that they wore. I love the teal. 2, the teal helmet on those road unis. Loved it. Really good look. Sharks bad team, but for years like they had the right color scheme but bad jerseys, and it was like, guys, how can you not figure this out? But I think they've got it right now. The more teal the better, and yeah, that's it. Also, by the way, tonight was the anniversary of the Joe Thornton trade, and we got Bruins Sharks, so that was good scheduling. Not that I think anyone really cared because it's the Sharks and there is
it was not on purpose. It's just gonna be it's coincidence, right?
Yes, I would assume so.
There's no way that they were like, you know what's gonna be a big seller. But by the way, they're playing the worst team in the league, and it was full. The crowd was full. I don't know what the ticket price was. I assume it's not the same as Toronto or anything like that.
I've been waiting for them to get Joe Thornton in the house at some point because he's on the All Centennial team. Like he's
not around. He's not around. I'm not sure he super associates his career with Boston. I don't feel like he's, that's not, it's been a while. He's played on other teams. I think he enjoyed playing for more. So one last thing. Bruins Toronto in Toronto Saturday. And I think I'll be able to watch it. I think I'll be out of my broadcast in time, hopefully, to watch it. And then hopefully jump on a podcast with you guys in the busiest week of my life this week. So, watch me on Nesson Friday and Saturday. UConn men Friday, UConn women Saturday. Shameless plug. Scott, I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna watch.
Yeah.
I'll have
Yeah.
the college hockey entertainment center set up for Friday night.
Mm-hmm. It will be quizzed on Saturday. So anyway, next game, Bruins Toronto, Saturday. Then they're back at the Garden Monday. Who's that against? Columbus.
Sunday, Sunday against Columbus.
Yes.
By the way, Toronto, Mitch Marner hat trick Thursday night. They beat the Kraken in a shootout. The Maple Leafs just keep winning in overtime and shootouts. They have 5 regulation wins in 21 games, but they have 7 additional wins in overtime and shootouts, which is just crazy.
Old strategy.
Yeah, like not the most sustainable. I think, ideally you'd want to win more games in 60 minutes, but Toronto also a little banged up, especially on defense. Mark Giordano going down, so.
And Montgomery someone already told him at some point during the Bruins game that they put Marner and Matthews back together, and he's like, I might change my lines to match up with just after he sees what Toronto gives. So,
or was it Nylander?
Oh yeah, it was Nylander. Yeah, so he's like, and so he noticed Toronto might have changed their lines, and he's willing to change his lines again. Is basically what he was saying in the post game press conference today against San Jose.
He shouldn't. That's my advice to Montgomery. Stick with these lines for at least another game.
Well, not going to happen. All right, Scott. Are we good?
Yeah.
We'll see everyone after Saturday's game against
or
potentially.
I don't want to make as I said, I don't want to make any promises. Because it might be after Sunday. It might be after Sunday's game.
Well, yeah. We'll get to you. Yeah, we'll do something. All right. So I guess it's time to sign off, and I can go to bed now. So bye. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.